Hello all, welcome to Stories from History. Now, this week I'd really like to talk about a personal favourite of mine from world history, William the Conqueror, the Norman king who became the King of Britain. This guy was immensely important for world history as he was the guy who brought the Norman presence into England. These guys would go on to then dominate the upper elite of England, and the royal family that we even see today are descendants of William the Conqueror. This guy was important for bringing in a lot of things. Mostly he was the guy that kind of did the first census in England, the Domesday Book. He brought a lot of culture and arts over from the French-Norman mixed side in Normandy. And a lot of the kind of castles we see, Tower of London, everything, these were built by the Normans. So these guys were incredibly important to English history and world history as a result, because we all know the massive impact that the English had on world history. So without further ado, let's get straight into the video. Please like, subscribe, drop a comment, all that nice stuff to help with the algorithm, and let's get right to it. So, the year is 1028. This is in the rough, wind-lashed duchy of Normandy. A young boy is born, and by all rights this guy shouldn't have mattered. His name was William. He was the illegitimate son of Duke Robert I and a tanner's daughter named Herleva. That was her name, Herleva. And so this resulted in him being branded with the name William the Bastard at a young early age. But Normandy wasn't a land for delicate people. The people who ruled over Normandy were still Viking descendants, barbarians, descended from raiders who came to Frankish soil and carved out their own domain by force. So in this type of brutal landscape, blood was less important than strength. But strength was something that William had plenty of. So, when William was only 8 years old, his father decided to take a pilgrimage to Jerusalem. Unfortunately, Dad never came back, and his son William inherited his throne, his duchy. Now, this instantly put a target on William's back. The Norman nobles sneered at him. Rivals plotted to seize power. And behind every corner, assassins lurked. More than one time, William was smuggled from castle to castle by loyal knights in the dead of night, while fields burned behind him. And he learned very early on that to trust someone was a true luxury, and that survival required both intelligence and violence. But it was in these turbulent years that we see the fire forged that made William a conqueror. By his teenage years, he was already starting to fight back. He was stomping out rebellions. He was brutally publicly executing traitors and proving that even an illegitimate son, a bastard, could be one to command loyalty through brilliance and intimidation. Now, by his 20s, Normandy was his. Secure, disciplined, and loyal to the man who had beaten it into submission. Now, across the channel, the English throne was a shimmering prize just in the distance. William had grown up hearing of his cousin, King Edward the Confessor, who had a wonderfully soft, nice, rich court compared to the more austere, kind of rough Norman court. Edward had no children, and rumour held that he had once promised the crown to William, his Norman kin. But promises mean little when kings die. When Edward breathed his last in January 1066, which, if any of you know history, you'll know 1066 is a very important year. The nobles crowned Harold Godwinson king. He was the most powerful of Edward's earls. You know, the most powerful of like Edward's like barons, lieutenants, whatever you want to call them. Now to William, this was a massive insult. He claimed Harold had even sworn an oath of fealty to him years earlier, promising to support his claim to English kingship. Now whether this was true or not, William seized on it as righteous cause. He began to prepare an invasion. Not a raid, like the Vikings have been doing for many years. A full-scale conquest. He gathered ships, knights, and mercenaries from across Normandy and beyond, promising them gold and land. Priests even blessed his venture as holy. And when the winds finally turned that autumn, William's fleet set sail across the Grey Channel waters bound for destiny. So, the stage is set. It's the 14th of October, 1066, near the town Hastings. The armies of Harold and William meet one-on-one in what would be one of the most decisive battles in European history. The English fought on foot behind their great shield wall, solid, grim, and unyielding. But the Normans, mounted on horseback, charged again and again, and they would break against this shield wall like waves against stone. And this battle went on for a very long time. However, William pulled out a tactic that, was famed by the famous Mongolians, the false retreat. Norman would retreat and draw a part of the English line into pursuit. Now, this broke the English shield wall. And when these guys, who have been battling for hours now, they'd been in this shield wall for a long time, they were desperate, they seen these guards running away, they broke rank. William's cavalry wheeled around and cut them down, and the shield wall broke. And by the end of the day, Harold was dead. Many like to say it was from an arrow to the eye, shot by William himself. His army was shattered, and England lay open for the taking, and William took it. On Christmas Day, 1066, William was crowned the King of England in Westminster Abbey. The ceremony was meant to symbolize peace and unity, but outside, the Norman guards mistook the shouting of acclamation for a riot and set fire to nearby houses. So the king's new reign had already begun amongst smoke and fear, which was an omen of years to come. William ruled England with an iron fist. He crushed rebellions without mercy, built castles that loomed over conquered towns, and replaced the English aristocracy with his Norman followers. He ordered the Doomsday Book, or Domesday Book depending on how you pronounce it, a vast survey of his new realm. This was to take inventory of everything that belonged to him so he knew what to tax. But it's a super important historical record that kind of shows us what life was like at the time. Very, very important piece of historical record right there. He brought law, organization, and stability. But he was also an oppressor. For the Anglo-Saxons, his rule was foreign occupation. For the Normans, it was the fulfillment of divine destiny. And in William's final years, even as king, his life was a cycle of war. He fought to keep control of Normandy, battled against the ambition of his own sons, and burned rebellious towns in England to ash. Age never softened him, only made him heavier, angrier, and even more suspicious. In 1087, while going to war in France, William's horse stumbled during a raid on the town of Mantiness. He was thrown against his saddle pommel, suffering mortal injuries. He lingered for weeks, tormented by pain and regret. When he died, his servants fled with his treasures. The body of the most powerful man in Europe was left nearly unattended. Eventually, when they tried to squeeze him into his coffin, it was too small, and his own body burst open. The stench of it drove mourners from the church. Even in death, William the Conqueror would not fit neatly into the world he had remade. So, William's conquests changed England forever. He fused Norman and Saxon cultures. He reshaped the language, the nobility, the laws, the very DNA and genetic makeup of the nation. Yet at heart, he remained what he had always been. A warrior who clawed his way from illegitimacy to empire through sheer will. He was called the bastard in death in youth and the conqueror in death, and both were true. Now, if you liked that video or you have any suggestions for the next one, please like, comment and subscribe below and let us know. But this is Stories from History. I hope you enjoyed this one. Have a great day.